right of the people, baby.
To truly choose to love is heroic.
Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people. And we're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people.
It takes the willingness to stand by and do what has to be done when it has to be done.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Off the Shelf Book Club, episode 2, going through section 2, and welcome back. We're excited to talk to you guys about section 2, chapters 3 through 6. Just a quick friendly reminder that if you need help with any resources with reading, down below in our description, we have plenty of links to resources to help you make reading more accessible for everyone. So if you or anyone you know needs help making reading more accessible or this literature more accessible, the link is at your disposal. Let us know in the comments if you have any more resources that we could use. And yeah, because the whole point of this podcast is to liberate your minds and to continue to make education more accessible for everybody. And we're excited to kick this off today. But first, we want to start off with a land acknowledgement, which we will be doing for the rest of our show. We will be starting off all of our shows with a land acknowledgement and because we want to make sure that we're covering all the communities and everybody is being seen. Along with, we want to promote a march that will be happening February 14th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Minneapolis at the Minneapolis American Indian Center. It's called the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives March. Again, that's February 14th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Minneapolis American Indian Center. We hope to see you guys there, and we will start off with our land acknowledgement.
The Off the Shelf Book Club wants to offer our utmost respect to those who came before us on this land. It is important that we protect and we acknowledge the history of the indigenous people of America. Minnesota Makoche, which means the land of the water that reflects the sky, is the homeland of the Dakota and the Anishinaabe people. Minnesota in its history has taken a part in the genocide of Native people and multiple treaties that have stripped them away from their homelands. Where Off the Shelf Book Club resides is home of the Middletawakaton people, which means dwellers of the Spirit Lake. Off the Shelf Book Club will do whatever we can to honor the Native people and their lands and do what we can to aid the land back movement.
Ashe.
Ashe.
So, Jesselyn, what do you think about this first section? Or the second section, sorry.
I think this section covered a lot of different topics that I think are important to talk about, especially as we look within as people of color. And so I definitely think that this is probably going to be a more heavier section than maybe some of the others because of some of the stuff that was talked about.
Yeah.
And some of the questions that we have.
For sure. I agree. Like I really appreciate this section because it gets to the direct root of the problem.
Yeah.
And like if we look at racism as like a singular, like if we look at racism as like a weed in a garden, it affects everything else.
Right.
And it bleeds into everything else. And I think that he really broke that down very well in this section.
Yeah, I think that like this section really like tackles those certain like racist beliefs that like are ingrained into a lot of people unknowingly. And like has you really thinking these things are wrong, like here's what you need to start like developing into your belief system instead.
And how to put these anti-racist ideas into practice. And like, I really appreciate, like, from the introduction on how he's connecting it to himself, and specifically like how he's writing it is with the paragraphs broken down to where there's chunks where he's telling a story of how like these ideas have affected him, and then he'll separate and talk about where those ideas came from, the root, the cause. And I think that with starting with the root and the cause of everything truly always gets it starts to create more actual real solutions and realistic solutions.
Right.
Because if we want a world with anti-racist policies and anti-racist people in it, we have to start agreeing on these definitions, agreeing on where the root of this issue is. Because if we don't agree where it starts, it's only gonna fester in different ways that we haven't seen before, or in different ways that we already have seen before.
Mm-hmm. And we just need to acknowledge that it did happen. Like these people thought these ways that then, right, interwoven into our societies. And so, like, there's a lot of what's the word? There's people challenging the facts that these things even happen, right? Like these things were being said, especially when he talks about in like chapter 3 and in chapter 4, specifically like as we look at more like really old texts that colonizers and like white people wrote, is like these crazy ideas about people of color and about black people and Native American people, is like those things actually happen. Like people said those things, and so it's like really important that like we all have to like acknowledge like
that was done.
It was done. It's
like acknowledging. It's like acknowledging the fact that we are on native land. That's like the bare minimum, is starting there, starting there. We can sit here and say that this is the root, stolen land. Boom. Agree there.
Right.
And if you disagree there, then you're just flat out wrong. There's no other, there is no other way of looking at this. And if you are looking at this like that, you're in a false reality.
Right.
No other way around that. And it makes it impossible to work with that type of thinking. You can't work with that type of thinking.
Right.
But we still have to manage to move forward and still spread that ideology, and not even just ideology, but just ideology of being anti-racist and getting to the root of this happened and this is why it happened. And we allow these things to slide. And if we stop being complicit with these ideas, we wouldn't see it continue to repeat itself.
Right.
So moving into chapter 3, and the first question that we got here is, how did racial puberty show for you, and how did it feel? My personal experience with it was, growing up, I was a bit of I wouldn't say troublemaker in school, but I was a hothead. I didn't let anything slide. And realizing how the school treated me different versus a lot of the white kids that I was fighting was one of the first moments that I was like, something's off here. And also experiencing how interacting with the black kids and the people of color, just people of color in our school, being looked at as just black, even though they know my mama was white. That is that was an experience for me, I I don't know. It was just like a newer experience for me to be like, okay, well, I'm black. I'm black in this sphere, right? I think my friends were the first time that I really accepted, like, yeah, well, I'm just black, because how I was looked at and how we talked, how we interacted, and even with the white friends that I had during that time too, just being like, I wasn't, even though they know that my mom is white, I'm not looked at as white at all. And so when I used to get defensive of people calling me black instead of being biracial or mixed, there was a sense of pride in being biracial or mixed, because that's a half of me, right? Mm-hmm. But eventually, like when dealing with the school and then dealing with my friends and then going out into the real world more and more as a teenager, you know, you get your baby steps into the world and seeing that that's just it. Yeah. That I am black. Once I leave my house, or once I leave this house, the world looks at me as black. Yeah. So that is what I am. That's what I am. I can't change. There's only so much that I can change about how the world looks at me. Now they can look, and more than likely, because of what we talk about in these chapters of like fear of the black body, now that's something that I genuinely have to consider. Mm-hmm. And those are conversations that luckily my father had those conversations with me about being a person of color, just black or person of color, dealing with the police, dealing with racist white folks. And when I started to accept that, it made me feel safe, made me feel safer, made me feel more, I don't know, just like one with myself, because I accepted that, yeah, I am black. Yeah. It doesn't take away from the fact that my mom is my mom, my grandma is my grandma, and I have a whole ancestry of white folks. But at the end of the day, when I came into this world, that's what I was deemed. Mm-hmm. Those doctors looked at me like that. And same for you. Right. Especially for you, especially being a black woman, you're looked at right there. Mm-hmm. And it starts there.
And my feet, like, as a baby, like, I look like a black ass baby.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a factor that, like, that was my racial puberty, was realizing that no matter what, when I step out, that I'm black. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's cool with me. Yeah. I'm black and I'm proud of being black. And I also have to remember that for my safety. Mm-hmm. And when I also have to remember that for like people around me too, to keep them informed of that, to show them that light, and it overall makes us safer, because we can't take away history. We can't take away the history. Right. Like, if we run away from the fact that, yeah, we are not too far away from the one drop rule. Point blank, period. There are people that, some of your grandparents, they were raised believing that. We are not that far from those ways of thinking. Mm-hmm. So that means that it is still in effect. Some of these people that are in office, Congress, Senate, House of Reps, I don't care. There are people in there that still believe that, who grew up believing that, who grew up in policies pushing that. Yeah. So learning that also made me proud and made me sit with it and accept it. Mm-hmm. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. Yeah, that was my racial puberty for me. And that's how it showed up for me. Being looked at as, when I was fighting, especially when I was fighting the white students, being looked at as this violent person, me getting the biggest punishment, even though every time I was defending myself.
Right.
And I would do the quote unquote right things, but the help wouldn't be there, because it's almost like they wanted you to just fall right back into it. Like, yeah.
Because they do.
Yeah,
like,
school to prison
there's
pipeline.
A whole system set up, even even unconsciously, for a lot of people who are in administration and teachers and things like that fall into this belief that us as Black kids and kids of color are more aggressive and all of those things, and punishment is a better punishment is the way to go, right? But that's how all of our systems are, is punishment. There's nothing rehabilitating about any of our systems.
Truly.
There's nothing restorative about any of our systems, even the education system. It's punishment. We have all these zero tolerance policies, which you could say in certain scenarios are beneficial, but then it's it'll still come back to affect us even the most negatively, right? Like we were talking about technical zero tolerance policies on hate speech. Well, the saying the N-word, right? Saying nigga, that would be put under there, right? Because that would make sense. And who is that going to affect the most? That's going to affect the Black students the most. Zero tolerance fight policies, those affect.
Right, exactly. That directly affects people like us. Because in my personal experience of it, it's being a smartass, I gave the school, they knew I was going to eventually fight this kid. I was brought into the office, they talked to me, brought my parents in. And I told them that, hey, he did this to me. You haven't done anything about it. He attacked me and didn't do anything about it. And so if he attacks me again and I put my hands on him, I will be punished. So the fact that there is even an opportunity for him to attack me again means that you're not protecting all your students. Because the key word is, again, it'd be different if it was this is a first time thing, but no. And I came to you and I told you, this is what's going to happen. Point blank, period. Because either you're going to protect me or I'm going to protect myself. And we should, as children, should be able to lean on the adults around us, Black or white, any fucking race. We should be able to lean on the adults around us to protect us. Because who else will? Who else will? And because they didn't do that, I ended up doing what I had to do. And I was punished. And we see how it played out. And again, you can't ignore how you are still treated because of the color, because you're darker than what, just because you don't pass this eye test, you are automatically demonized. On page 37 talks about, but for all of that life-shaping power, race is a mirage which doesn't lessen its force. We are what we see ourselves as, whether what we see exists or not. What we are what people see us as, whether what they see us as exists or not. What people see in themselves and in others has meaning and manifests itself in ideas and actions and policies, even if what they are seeing is an illusion. Race is a mirage, but one that we do well to see. Oh, I'm really reading badly. Race is a mirage, but one that we do well to see, while never forgetting it is a mirage, never forgetting that it's the powerful light of racist power that makes the mirage. It is clearly, obviously, a race itself is a made-up social construct.
Yeah.
But how we'll get into it soon. But just because somebody said these things years ago and determined that this is how it is, made it to where those adults in my life, in your life, that we were supposed to be protected by in these public systems that are supposed to be for everybody. Because y'all, the system is not supposed to only serve white students, because y'all brought us the fuck here. Y'all decided to come on to native land and massacre, genocide most of them. And the ones that are here, you act like they don't exist. That's why even as an anti-racist, we have to hold on to that identity. Mm-hmm. Because we can't forget the history. Because if we forget the history, then we continue to repeat this shit like we are currently doing. And we have to hold on to, remember that it is just some bullshit ass shit that some bullshit ass person made up. But also, it has real consequences. Yeah. So, I guess, is there anything else that you want to say about that, topic?
I just think that, right, it's important to acknowledge, right, it's a self made, it is a social construct. This is something that was created and it was made, and right, because of that, now we have to sit with it, we have to acknowledge it, and we have to use it in order to get better and to be anti-racist. And he says on page 38, where he talks about himself, the gift of seeing myself as black instead of being colorblind is that it allows me to clearly see myself historically and politically as being an anti-racist, as a member of the interracial body striving to accept and equate and empower racial difference of all kinds. And then later he says, it is one of the ironies of anti-racism that we must identify racially in order to identify the racial privileges and dangers of being in our bodies. Mm-hmm. So, we can't just, sit around and be like, it's a racial construct, it's just a social construct, let's forget about it. No, we have to use these parameters now. Mm-hmm. Because acting colorblind is actively putting in those racist policies. That's how we get racist policies.
Mm-hmm. Because somebody in 1460 named Prince Henry decided to sail to West Africa and decide that he was going to start giving people titles to divide and start dividing people, because he thought he knew better, and he knew that he could take advantage and profit off of it, because we on page 39 just talks about Prince Henry a lot, and I'll just read this paragraph real quick. Until his death in 1460, Prince Henry sponsored Atlantic voyages to West Africa by the Portuguese to circumvent Islamic slave traders, and in doing so created a different sort of slavery than that had existed before. Pre-modern Islamic slave traders, like their Christian counterparts in pre-modern Italy, were not pursuing racist policies. They were enslaving. What we now consider to be Africans, Arabs, and Europeans alike. At the dawn of the modern world, the Portuguese began to exclusively trade African bodies. Prince Henry's sailors made history when they navigated past the feared black hole of Cape Bajor. I'm going to butcher that. Cape Bojador? Off Western Sahara, and brought enslaved Africans back to Portugal. They had a target, and we all became targets in different ways. And the target here was to profit off of separating people, because there was the Islamic slave trade did not segregate. It was going after whoever they could conquer, which is an issue within itself, right? Yeah. But because he decided these people were built to enslave, that now we can run with this. Now we can protect ourselves, because Europeans were part of the Islamic slave trade. Mm-hmm. But now let's separate ourselves. We're not built for that. All right. Question 2. How can we name future generations or change names that honor our ancestry and not our oppressors?
I think I think this is a really interesting question for multiple reasons. He talks specifically about how his great-great-grandfather was named after Prince Henry, this navigator, right, who did all those things that you said previously, and that it was his middle name, right, before he changed it. And so this idea, because changing as Black people, changing our names, especially towards African names, isn't uncommon, right? We've seen tons of our revolutionaries do this, right, and dropping our enslavers' names and things of that nature to pick up ones from Africa. Mm-hmm. And so, but these names also have rich history to them, right? His great-grandfather was enslaved at a time. Mm-hmm. And so there is a space, right, where it's if we drop all of these names that were in our family's history for generations, mm-hmm. right, before, that signify the type of stuff that our people went through, right? We don't want to necessarily rid of those, right? We want to be able to uplift our ancestors, remember them, and those senses, and those names are heavy. I don't want to be named after Prince Henry the Navigator, right. That's for sure. Right? So you can't blame somebody either for those, for changing their names. And there is a power within changing your name, mm-hmm. to something that you believe more in, right? That can embody you and what you're made to do.
Right.
And so the question, how can we name future generations, like thinking about, right? Because some of you might have kids, some of you don't. Maybe, some of you are thinking about baby names right now at the moment.
Right.
What can, like, we do to hold our ancestors that were named after these terrible people, hold them in our light and hold them in our families.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because naming, like, after family names are still super important to Black Americans, and particularly, and like across people of color, like, as well. But I know that there are traditions, right? There are traditions. I met somebody who talked about, like, her name, and like what they did was that when you come, like when you're first born and you cry, right? They start naming, like they start giving names, right? Until you stop. And whatever name you stop, like, crying at, like, that is your name. That was meant to be your name. And those names that they go through are like their ancestors' names. That's your grandma's name, your great-great-grandma's name, your great-great-great-great-great-grandma's name, right? Like, all of those things. So, like, those traditions are important, and we need to keep those traditions, and we should be proud of those traditions.
Yeah.
And we also need to, like, rid of, like, in a way, right, rid of the history of, like, the horrible history right behind them. Because those names do come from somewhere. Those last names do come from somewhere. And it's not something, right, that we, like, I think the debate on whether we can or cannot be proud of it. Because I also think that there's a space of, like, we have created, like, as Black Americans, we have created
An identity.
Right, that bases off of the enslavement of us.
Yeah.
That is turned into something beautiful, right? You see it, like, at least 5 times a day during Black History Month, right? Of them showing, right, of, like, edits, right, showing the beautiful things that we've created, that we've adapted, that, of course, right, like, different spaces have originated from Africa, but we have adapted to fit us.
Truly.
Like, we are, in ways, our own entity that we've adapted from our African ancestors.
Right. And I think that a way that we can honor our ancestors is to acknowledge them. Like, we have to start giving them more praise and giving them more love and just acknowledgement. It's kind of like, you don't have to, you can be a Christian and honor your ancestors and acknowledge your ancestors. You don't have to practice it. To honor your ancestors is human practice. That's for anybody. It's just, we have to, it's like, again, knowing the history, accepting the history. It's like land acknowledgement. This is what happened. And we will never forget that. Even though we are now known as the United States, that forever it will be Turtle Island. Right? Forever my ancestors, their names were Wade, right? But if I change my name, that doesn't take away from them. And I have to do the job and do the due diligence of doing that. And that's for everybody. Everybody can honor your ancestors. Talk about them. Tell their stories. Passing down from generation to generation. Because that's not necessarily, it's a spiritual practice, but it's like a spiritual practice as in you're a human. and this is where you come from. You're connecting to the greater world around you.
Right.
Is there anything else that you would like to say for that question?
Not necessarily. I think we can move on
Cool.
to our next question, which is it possible for those who benefit from racist powers and policies to be able to give up their self-interest for other people, and can you expect others to do that? So this comes from the bottom of page 42 to 43, and he says, the root problem from Prince Harry to President Trump has always been the self-interest of racist power. Powerful economic, political, and cultural self-interest, the primitive accumulation of capital in the case of Royal Portugal and subsequent slave traders, has been behind racist policies. And so, as America in particularly, there is a space where a lot of people are comfortable, and there is no hiding, right, that regardless of the kind of white person that you are, right, whether you're rich, poor, and anywhere in between, right, no matter what are the things that you've dealt with, you benefit from the white supremacy or like white narcissism that comes to play in America. And like even us as people of color, right, have a somewhat understanding of what comfortability looks like. There are plenty of us that sit at home, work from home, get groceries delivered on a daily, get Amazon packages at the door daily, right? Like living in genuine comfortability.
Right.
Nobody wants to give that up.
Right.
But the reality is for true liberation, for true like revolution, you have to give up comfortability. You have to be uncomfortable. Like you have to give up the things that make life easy for you. For like, and it can be temporarily, right?
That doesn't mean, and giving those up doesn't mean that life is going to be hard. I think
That
that's what
too.
people have to understand, is that it doesn't mean that it's going to be hard. It's just going to look different. Things will look different. Instead of you ordering Amazon, a company, multi-billionaire company, you order from local shops, because that more people have opportunities to create those.
Right.
And make it, and guess what? If there's more people having the opportunity to create, who says that they won't make convenience for you too, and comfortability for you too? Because that's all we want. As humans, we like the main thing that humans do, I think, across race, ethnicity, any culture, is avoid pain. That's all we do.
Yeah. And so, like, the question is like, can we expect white people to give up their privileges? If there are some, like, for example, there are some people of color out here that can't even give up Starbucks for real.
Right.
That was hard for me. Okay, I still did it. Right? And it was whatever, right? You just find other sources, right? And that just means that I put my money in better places. It meant, like, if I'm going to go get coffee, I'm going to have to go find a local coffee shop, right? And so, like, when I get coffee, that's what I do, right? I go, we for the most part, go to local coffee shops.
And that just even that little bit, that's getting you out into your community. That's you reaching out to you. That's community outreach. That is you going and experiencing the world around you, instead of staying within the bubble that overall I won't even just say white people. I'll just say I don't want to generalize with white people. I'll just say the system at play wants you to stay home, wants you to be in your comfortable zone so that you don't think about the terrifying world around you until it starts knocking at your door. Mm-hmm. That's it. And so kind of like how what you were talking about earlier of how can we expect white people to give up on the supremacy system, the white supremacy system that exists? I think if they put it into a different perspective of giving up those things, like we're giving something up, we're taking something from you, instead of we're giving more life to everybody. Because here we're talking about this is towards the end of our section here on page 79. In other words, he's talking about crime. In other words, researchers have found a much stronger and clearer correlation between violent crime levels and unemployment rates than between violent crime and race. And if at the end of the day, white people are poor, black people poor, Asian people poor, we're all poor. Mm-hmm. And you are, even though you think that system benefits you, and it does in ways, that system is still fucking you over. And that's what you got to get through your head. Mm-hmm. Like we shouldn't have the highest prison population in the world. If we were a great country, we wouldn't have as many quote unquote criminals.
Right.
And if we start, if the overall mindset changes on that, and I think it can, especially with everything going on, mm-hmm. You're somebody, more than likely, because of the world that we live in America, you know somebody of color, a person of color, right? Mm-hmm. You know some person of color, and if you think that those people that you've accepted in your life, those people of color that you've accepted in your life, if you see them affected by this stuff, and then you also start looking in your family and looking at your history and how you're also affected by this stuff too, it will genuinely, I think it could generate a flip in the minds of all generations. If we could just sit here and be like, hey, do you know somebody I guess that's not a good example. I was going to say, have you known somebody to get beaten up by the police? Right. And I know plenty of like my white grandfather, he got beat up by the police on some bullshit. Mm-hmm. And he forever looked at the police. We never trusted the police from then on. Oh, we can agree on that. Mm-hmm. There's a community of people that agree with you on that. And you rightfully have that. You can rightfully feel those emotions. Mm-hmm. Now let's push it to the next level. Why is it like that? Now imagine if you're a person of color. Mm-hmm. Now Angela Davis had a quote that said, if we listen to black women, everybody's life gets overall better. If we listen to the voices of black women, because black women have to think about way more than anybody should have to consider. Like with the stresses, and I don't want to speak for black women, but
it's the bottom up theory, right?
Right.
The idea that there is, like, how the racial hierarchy goes, like, in, like, bottom up theory that also includes, like, intersectionality and how, right, like, the racial hierarchy goes that includes gender, right? Ultimately, right, black and indigenous women are at the bottom of that pole. So if we, like, the theories, right, suggest that if we do what we say, it quite literally will lift everybody up. Mm-hmm. It lifts everybody up because it's helping the people at the bottom. And so if it helps the people at the bottom, it automatically helps the people that are above them in all forms. And so, like, I think for me, it's an easy question. Like, it's an easy answer. Yes, of course, right? I want you to be able to give up those comfortabilities because I can give up mine. And if I can give up mine, there should be no reason why you can't give up yours. Because I don't, as a black woman, I don't have a lot to begin with.
Right. You're already giving up less, or you're giving up more because you don't have as many. So it's bare minimum. Like, yo, you don't need to go to Starbucks. You could go hit a local coffee shop. There's probably a closer local coffee shop to you than a Starbucks. The reality of it. You can find one anywhere. They're everywhere, dog.
And even if there's not, because I think there's also a reality that we all live in different areas. For where we live, let's be honest, between the city that you live in and the city that I live in, there's one local coffee shop. And that's the one by cup.
Oh, there's two. No, there's two.
Oh, there's two. Sorry.
The Cork, and
There's
are we
two.
considering? I don't know. Dunbros isn't.
That's not.
No, that's not local. I know.
Everything but local.
Yeah, I know.
So like that, like for people that's not like you can't be applied to everybody, but you can make your coffee from home.
Yeah.
You can do those things, right?
Yeah.
That's what I had to do. I started making coffee from home, investing in those things. Not everybody can do that, but then it looks different, right? Getting stuff from different areas, and that's like I don't want to say I was addicted to caffeine, but I relied heavily on caffeine because it was during me being in college, which means it was like a lot of what I was only intaking was caffeine.
Yeah, we're surviving on that.
And Starbucks was easy for me to go to because my school had it in there, and I still said I'm not going to order anything from there, and I will get my caffeine somewhere else.
And it doesn't take much to do that. Okay, it might take much, but for those people who do, find a different way. There's always a different way to resist. There are so many different ways to resist. Reading, taking part in this book club is resisting. Because we're not going to be talking about topics that are going to be talked about, and we're going to be thinking about topics and ideas that people don't really want to talk about. And so whatever way that you can resist, just find that way. Resistance takes many forms. Just remember that.
I feel like we kind of already answered this question. I think to move on to the next question, I think we can talk about the two questions that are next in the same, which are, how do microaggressions show up beyond the usual examples we see? And how do we identify and use new words without erasing the history of other words? And so this comes from right at chapter 4 when it talks about biology. And he talks about how there's this dark-skinned black girl who was so quiet, never really talked at all, didn't raise her hand, and one day, right, she had slowly raised her hand, and the teacher purposely overlooked her and only called on the white students. And this pissed Ibram X Khendi off as a kid, which rightfully so, right? And so he talks about what was just seen was the example of a microaggression. And so this isn't usually an example of a microaggression that we usually talk about when we talk about microaggressions,
right?
When they're talked about in bias training and things of that nature, right? Is that these white teachers purposely not calling on their students of color, and only calling on white students and things like that. So what are those things that we that are things that we don't usually talk about, because those are important to point out so that we can understand when they're being used. Right? It's not always can I touch your hair? And
Right.
I'm just as, like, I'm almost as dark as you after somebody done came back from a vacation on a beach or something. It's intentionally not calling on your students of color when they're raising their hand. It's not acknowledging them in any way. It's those little things. It's not saying anything at all, right? When something should be said,
Right.
or something should be done, it's doing, nothing at all in those senses. And I think it also is like a good conversation to kind of introduce, especially with everything going on right now, like the Minnesota paradox, which is like we are looked at as one of the best states to live in. We're looked at as one of the happiest places to be, and that might be true to some extent, but the reality is that in terms of racial disparities, we actually hold some of the worst in this country.
True. Yeah.
Whether it's education, income, and things of that, like it is so far apart from each other when we look at like black students or black people versus white people. Like it is a horrible gap, and like it's not talked about enough here, and the realities of that, which means that it just goes unseen. Right? Like we gloss over it, and so then there's this like space, right, of a lot of people having arguments right now because ICE is in here doing things that is not new to us black Minnesotans.
Right.
Right? Like this is like the police have done this to us. Like the Minnesota, Minneapolis in particular, has a horrible history with police. If we want to talk about gangbangers, the Minneapolis Police Department
Had a gang, like majority of these motherfuckers, but it shows you that just because we're in Minnesota doesn't mean that we are escaping the system that is all around us, because the system is a weed. It continues to it in every nook and cranny of this country you can find racism.
I like to think of Minnesota as a big ass microaggression.
Yeah.
Because it's like all of these, and like it's one of those microaggressions that aren't necessarily like seen or talked about as a microaggression, because like they're doing things that like aren't like you can't just point out like right away. Can't just point out those things and be like, that's what, because it's not talked about. And so then that allows for us to be able to, or at least like that allows for racist policies then to like enter into our systems, right? Because our microaggressions as a state are constantly going unchecked.
I agree with you. And I think that if we start calling out these things as what they are, like how he said on 55 or page 55, he said, I defended my dissertation, but I did not use terms like racist abuse and racist ideas. I used terms like fair and unfair, sad and happy. We got to start calling out like the Minnesota nice microaggression, like the big ass microaggression that we are here in Minnesota. We got to call it out as it is. And these microaggressions, it's racist abuse. It's like, and it's just because they're not beating you with their racism doesn't mean that they're not emotionally affecting you with their racism, because and psychologically fucking with you with your racism, because then it starts making you question it can make you question your worth, your blackness, your all these things, and it needs to be called out for what it is, because nobody wants, like, the average person doesn't want to be called an abuser.
Yeah.
So if we start calling it racist abuse, we might start seeing people look at it differently, because it is abuse. And those microaggressions that, like, the teacher displayed here, that's neglect.
Yeah.
And we got to keep that in mind.
Right. I think it's also important. Like I say, like, also when I call, like, Minnesota a microaggression, even with him using the idea, like, he doesn't use microaggression anymore. And, like, pulling right, because he talks about it at the end of page 46, where he's talking about how racism went out of fashion, and, like, nobody uses that anymore, and that it's microaggression. It's all of these other words, stereotypes, implicit bias. But, like, calling Minnesota a microaggression is that space, because God forbid if I use racist, the R word, they would better appreciate something like microaggression, when the reality is that it is a racist state.
Yeah. And I think that we have to, like, what you brought up of the emergence of microaggression, the word microaggression, and it being around the post-race era, and that being marked as Obama. Obama being a post-race era. I think that Obama truly made a lot of people more complacent, and made people think that, oh my God, we have made the progress. But Obama was just because... No, Obama, we know that people, just because they have the same skin color as you, does not mean that they have your best interests. That does not always mean that. Coons have always existed.
Yeah.
Uncle Toms have always existed. Sellouts have always existed. And being black did not stop Obama from bombing countries in the Middle East and Africa. And those people look like us. And if we really want to be real honest, I think that we have gotten so complacent with this, because the fact that, like, if we were sitting here talking about Obama as the first black president, we still clearly believe in the one drop rule. Because he is mixed. Yeah. And that's not a conversation. That's not part of the conversation. Because obviously it is still important that a black man is up there. Like the conversation we were having earlier. But if we were truly past the rate, like we're a post-race society, he wouldn't be called just a black president. Because he is a black president. He was the first black president. I'm not taking that away. Yeah. But the point is that we got complacent, because even the wording of Obama being our first black president is a conversation.
Yeah. And I think the complacency really started, in my opinion, from the things that I've seen, was the complacency started with Clinton, because there was a group of people who began to settle with the idea that Clinton was the equivalent to our first black president.
Oh my God, yeah.
And because of that, next, we actually did have our first black president. What more do we need to do now?
Right.
For those people. That was that process. You're just gonna accept this white man that decided to play the saxophone, and I can't remember where was it, Arsenio Hall?
Yeah.
Was the first black president. Honorary first black president. Because of that allowed us to not critique Obama for some of the things that he did that he shouldn't have done, and just allows him to be his greatest president of all time just because he's black.
When in the reality, like, there are positive things. There are positive things that Obama did, but at the end of the day, he was Just like you could say fucking Nixon or Reagan did positive things, but it doesn't take away from the fact that they were still attacking these people.
And we should just be able to critique politicians no matter who they are. I'm sure, like I'm almost certain that there was something that Jimmy Carter did that you could critique that was not good
Right.
for society from our outlook.
Right.
You probably could.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's okay. That doesn't diminish all the things that he's done that were positive, that we could only hope that he, because people didn't like him, right? We got I don't even remember came after him. It was either Reagan or Nixon. Like the bullshit, right?
The
that
real
then
bullshit started coming
followed,
in. Yeah.
right?
I want to say it was Nixon, but Nixon. I don't know. Was Jimmy Carter that old?
Yeah.
He was about 100 when he died.
Yeah.
Didn't he just die?
Yeah.
Yeah. R.P. Jimmy.
Like we just need to be able to critique all of our politicians, and it'd be okay. That doesn't mean that people aren't going to vote for them. That doesn't mean that like we just need to start critiquing them, holding them accountable so that we actually get the things that we want. Like there is a reality that like certain politicians that even are doing great things still need to be held accountable. Zoran Mandami needs to be held accountable because I know he just, like, I think he posted something on Twitter that it sounds like he might not have gotten the full story, or there are some things, right? But there was a boy who, I think it was an Asian boy who was shot by the police because of a mental health call that had happened. And he had responded with it, like, in a tweet, and it did not go over well with a lot of people, right? It needs to be held accountable. He needs to be held accountable, even though he's doing all these great things in New York that have me just out here, like, depressed as fuck because we had our opportunity and
shit ain't looking like it's gonna be like that.
Right.
At all.
Here in, Minnesota and stuff like that, that just didn't come to us, right? And all those things, or like Jasmine Crockett still needs to be held accountable for some of the things that she's done or said yes to, and all of that. And you can still vote for her, and she can be a better option. Yeah.
And I wish there were, like, obviously there is something that we can do to get out of this two-party system, but I want to get out of this two-party system as fast as we need more options. These two people that they always choose is just some bullshit, like Amy Klobuchar. Sorry, shorty, you locked up how many people? You targeted how many people of color? I'm not ever going to trust you. I'm not going to trust you. And maybe we can work. I know I need to work on my reconciliation, work on trying to find that with other people. But the way you talk about these things that are going on constantly in the community, you never really show the real, like, she's always shown the same spinelessness that all Democrats show. Oh, we still gotta be tough on crime. And what we talked about earlier, when you're being tough on crime, low key, you just say that you're being racist. You're creating racist policy because that's who it affects the most. It affects people of color the most. And we just gotta start holding these people accountable. Because Amy Klobuchar, you like to lock people up. I'm not for it. Yeah, you love to lock people up.
My opinion, you gotta go.
Truly, mine too. I don't think you could convince me that or any other way. But you can't be pro-prison and pro-education. And right now, we don't need somebody who is pro-prison. We got enough people in prison. We need somebody pro-education, pro-social services. Fuck funding the prisons. Like, we can't keep on continuing to drop all the... Never mind. We ain't even going to get into that. That's a different conversation for a different day. But you get where I'm going. Damn. Damn. Have a backbone. All right. Due to these topics needing a more in-depth conversation, we decided that we want to split this up into this section into 2 different episodes. So we're dropping this one, and then we're also dropping one on Saturday with a part 2 of this section 2, because there's a lot of topics that we feel like we need to hammer down on. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode and look forward to talking with y'all in the future. Thank you. Don't forget to submit your comments either under the YouTube video, reach out to our social media DMs, or our email of your answers on the questions that we ask, any comments or concerns that you have for us, or any advice that you have for us. We always would love to reach out to the community and get your advice. So don't forget to interact with us. We greatly appreciate it, and we look forward to building with y'all in the future. And with all that, we wish you all well, peace of mind, and great health and wealth. Peace be with y'all. Ashe.
Ashe.
I write it to people, baby.
To truly choose to love is heroic.
Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people. And we're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people.